So today I want to talk to you about the different labels that we see in the grocery stores. We see things like GMO-free, cage-free, range-free, grass-fed, local, natural. And so I want to break that down and talk to you about that. So first of all, I want to let you know anything that is organic is actually labeled with a tag, and it starts with the number 9 and is a 5-digit number. So when you are shopping, look for that 5-digit number that starts with 9. If it is not organic, it would be a 4-digit number, which would start with 3 or 4. So number 3 or 4 on non-organic produce and food. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is antibiotic-free. So antibiotic-free is exactly what it sounds like. The animals are not giving any antibiotics whatsoever. So when you are looking at labels for food, no matter what you're buying for meat product, make sure you do look at that to make sure the animals are antibiotic-free, if that is a concern of yours. The second thing I want to talk about is bioengineered food, and what that means is it's actually modified in a lab. That's something you want to stay away from for sure. So it's bioengineered food. The second or third thing I should say is cage-free animals, and mostly when they talk about cage-free, they're talking about chickens. So chickens that are not raised in cages. Again, it does not mean they're out, roaming the pasture. They still could be in a massive enclosure, being close very together, which again causes diseases, things like that. And again, doesn't mean they're not on antibiotics for that. So it's something you definitely want to look at. Free range, so free range means that they are able to roam free out in the pasture. However, it's only for a limited time and weather permitting. So doing a little bit of research, they only have to allow the chickens specifically, that's what it usually is that they can be outdoors for up to 6 hours, and they have to have a certain amount of space that they can be outdoors. And again, it does not mean that they don't have hormones pumped into them and antibiotics as well. So another thing I want to talk about is GMOs. We've all heard about genetically modified foods, and now we're starting to see labels that says non-GMOs. So that's something that I know I stay away from GMO foods, and again, genetically modified foods on that. So then we have our grass-fed, which is usually beef that they're talking about. But on that, it doesn't mean that the animal's actually outdoors grazing in a pasture like it naturally would and roaming free outside. So that's something you actually have to look at. I will jump up to that. And so what they would talk about for that would be pasteurized or pastured raised, which in other words, pasture raised means that they're able to roam free like they naturally would and graze on the grass that they would have. Normally now, unfortunately, everything's mass production. The animals are kept in, very close proximity. They're fed hormones, antibiotics. They're not even fed, their grains that they're supposed to be fed. So it's another thing you want to make sure the animals, it actually says on the package, if it says grass-fed, that's 100% vegetarian diet, that there's no animal products fed to these other animals, because that is not natural for these animals to have that. They're vegetarian. Specifically, I'm talking about cows here. And so then we talk about local, which I always try to buy local, which means anything that is 100 miles or less within your area, depending on where you live. I know that can be difficult, especially here in New England, when you want fruits and certain types of vegetables. Right now, it's just root vegetables that you'd be able to get around here that would be local. But I know for myself, in the summer, I'll go strawberry picking and blueberry picking, and there's a lot of food that you can freeze, vegetables and also fruit, so you can actually have that last, if you have a freezer, through the winter months. So when you are shopping, try to look for local, raised and close by proximity for fruits and vegetables, and even for animals, if you are somebody that consumes meat. There's one thing my son actually did, we had talked about it, and he actually bought a quarter of a cow about 6 months ago. And it actually, he knew it was pasteurized, so the animal was, you know, able to roam free, had a natural environment, was antibiotic-free, grass-fed. And if you figure it out, it's actually a lot cheaper to buy the animal that way. If you have a freezer, to, you know, keep the meat in, and that's going to last him 1.5 to 2 years. I want to say it cost him about $300 to $400 for that. And again, sounds like a big chunk to come up with, or a lot of money, but not if you break it down and you can get the different specific things that you want. So if you want so much hamburger, so many ribs, steaks, things like that, you can do that. The same thing goes with chicken, pork, or anything like that. I would try to look for something that is local, a local small farm where the animals are pasture raised. You know, they're treated much more humanely. They're in their natural environment, and they're not pumped with hormones. So when we think about that also, you have to remember all those things that those animals are eating, it affects us, because when we eat those meat products, that is going into our system, and that's affecting our body as well and our health. It's the same thing to go with when you were talking about produce and fruit, because anything that's sprayed on that, you know, the fruit and vegetables, that is going into our system. So you want to make sure you try to buy organic. I know I wash my fruits and vegetables down all the time before I consume anything. I do not, one thing I will talk about, because I don't eat meat, I am a pescatarian, so I eat fish. So I'm going to talk about fish, the same thing. Making sure it is a sustainable fish that is not raised on, because you'll see a lot now that they have farm-raised fish. So I will not buy farm-raised fish, because they are not feeding them what they naturally eat in their environment. For instance, specifically salmon, they pump a specific dye in there to create that redness that is naturally in salmon when they're in their natural environment and they're raised. So I always make sure I buy wild caught and sustainable. You want to make sure it's not over, you know, what do you want to call it? Over, they take too much, in other words, out of the ocean. We want to make sure it's sustainable in there, and there's enough left, you know, to keep years coming back for all the fish and things like that. So I hope you have a great day. Remember to get outdoors in nature, and your path of physical and emotional wholeness is waiting to be created.